The United States Supreme Court has issued a flurry, I guess you would call it, of really horrendous rulings within just the last 7 days. Joining me now to talk about this, including obviously the big one, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, is Rayyvana, host of Reactions on Twitch. Rayyvana, it is great to have you here on Ring of Fire.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you. And we actually, we had discussed you coming on back when the draft was leaked. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, you're in law school. Fortunately, you are. But you had some issues that week, some exams that you had to focus on. But now, unfortunately, we are here and we do have the actual overturning of Roe, which, of course, has been the big one. So we all know now what has happened. Roe is being overturned. You've got these states with the trigger laws that have gone into effect. Some lower courts are blocking some of them. It's hell out there right now. But I think what we need to talk about at this point is the Democratic reaction to it, because we have had a little bit of movement on that this week. So just in general, what is your thoughts about this reaction from the Democratic Party that we have seen in the last, 7 days here?
Well, it was exactly how I expected it to be, given how impotent and feckless the Democratic Party has been in the past. And, seeing Nancy Pelosi and the other establishment Democrats, really go to bat for Henry Cuellar, who's a forced birth congressperson who is up against progressive Democrat Jessica Cisneros, and he won by only, I believe, less than 300 votes. It was an extremely close race. So, they're not afraid to support these, they love to campaign on and fundraise more so on protecting the rights to abortion. But when it comes down to it, I have had very low expectations of them. And especially Joe Biden has been, he has sort of given lip service to wanting to protect Roe, but throughout his entire career has said that he thinks abortion is not a right. He said that he doesn't think that a woman has a right to choose necessarily. He's voted, for the Hyde Amendment and reiterated that he thinks that was a good thing to do. He hasn't sort of dispelled the idea that that abortion is not murder. So they can say that they want to firmly protect this, but the core of their party seems to not truly care deeply about it. And their reaction now, it's just hard to take seriously, as Nancy Pelosi is sending me emails immediately after the decision comes out telling me that she can't breathe, which was like so ridiculous. But you need to send me $15 right now. I can't even stand up. I couldn't believe that this was going to happen, which is one, insane considering we already had the draft opinion, but also that this has been the plan of the Republicans for decades now. And we've seen them take steps to accomplish this plan. We all knew this was coming. You knew this was coming, and you didn't do anything to prevent it from coming. So the establishment's response has been pretty lackluster, pretty annoying. But, Democrats like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have actually been putting out useful resources. AOC caught flack the other day for posting about how to have a self-induced abortion at home safely. And someone tried to call her out for it. And she said, so what? Yeah, I did post that. Thank you for boosting it. Now more people will see it, and she's been pretty fearless in calling out the establishment when it comes to overturning the Hyde Amendment, the possibility of, opening or having abortion providers on federal land in states where abortion will be outlawed or is already outlawed. So it's nice to see people who are willing to fight in Congress, but there's a lot of people they have to overcome in the establishment to make anything happen.
Absolutely. And, AOC's been out in the streets with people as well. And speaking of the people that were out in the streets, I think one thing that was really interesting to me, not surprising, but interesting, was that when some of these people were interviewed by the media, the first thing they did was call out the Democrats. And to me, that was very powerful, because I know the Democratic Party right now, and even the polls are showing that, oh yeah, Democrats are energized. We want to use this and write it into the midterms. But The people are pissed, and they're not only mad at that Supreme Court, they're mad at you, because not only does this show that Republicans can play the long game and win, but it also shows that you as a party ignored every single warning, even when you had your majorities, when you had Obama, all of these years when you could have done something and told us, no, you're overreacting. And now it's over. And then Biden comes out Thursday and he says, oh, whoa, I'm actually okay with changing the rules of the filibuster. You know, now that Patrick Leahy is basically out of commission, and so you only have 49 Democrats. But he says, yeah, I'm totally okay with that, and let's codify Roe. But, you know, I can't do that. That has to come from the Senate. I mean, my God, what a pathetically just infantile response from this administration.
Yeah, and that's the day after it was announced that Joe Biden is going to nominate a pro-forced birth judge to the federal bench in some ridiculous deal that he's made with Mitch McConnell. I always describe their relationship as Lucy with the football and Charlie Brown. Like, Mitch McConnell is saying, oh, I won't hold up any more nominations if you just nominate this one, pro-forced birth judge to the bench. And, when Joe Biden needs to move forward with a different nomination, of course he's going to pull the football away. He always pulls the football away. You have no reason to think that this is a person who is, actually going to stand up, for their word and have any sort of, sorry, my cat just jumped up here, but and actually have any sort of principles that they stand on. He's demonstrated time and time again that he isn't. So yeah, it's been ridiculous. I mean, it's sad. This is an urgent moment. People, are going to die, but this is exactly what the Democrats deserve after falling into the Republican framing of the issue for as long as they did, right? It's always, for them, it's been safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. Abortion has been a dirty word. That's the Republican framing of the issue. If you actually think there's nothing wrong with abortion, then it's just another, someone's getting a medical procedure or taking just some pills. This is healthcare. This isn't something that you should be concerned about being rare. That implies that there's something inherently bad about it. And they've really, really fallen apart with that messaging. And it's come back to bite them in the butts. And that's what we're seeing right now.
And, furthermore, too, with that Biden-McConnell deal, first of all, you're making a deal with a guy that held a Supreme Court seat hostage and then unsurprisingly broke his own rule to get Amy Coney Barrett up there. But more importantly, it's 100% unnecessary. Biden has actually had tremendous success with appointing federal judges throughout the country. He, at this point in his presidency, has appointed more than Trump had at this point in his presidency. So there was no problem. There was no issue on which he needed to compromise. There's not even a frickin' vacancy in Kentucky. He made this deal for a future, possibility to appease these people that are repeatedly showing we're going to stab you in the back as soon as you turn around. And we may not even wait till you turn around to stab you in the back. We may look you in the eyes and reach around and stab you from there. And Biden says, but there's still good Republicans out there. Some of these folks are they're reasonable. They're not like Trump. No. Every one of them is like him. It just, different rappers at this point. Same candy, different rapper.
It really is the West Wing ramifications in our politics that we're seeing. This idea that you can just sit down across the table from a Republican and work out your differences because they're just ideological, and you still you're looking at a person who is a human being who feels strongly about issues and wants the best for the world. No, you're not. You're looking at someone who genuinely wants harm on the world. You can't reason with these people. And a lot of the Democrats are the same way, right? They're beholden to their donors. And beyond that, or the Federalist Society or whatever sort of ideological organizations are behind the Republicans, or on the Democrat side, more so their donors, right? You're not striking a deal that's in the best interest of the American people. That's just a West Wing fantasy of how politics work. It's 2022, Joe Biden. I know that most days you wake up and think that it's, 1968 and you're at the pool fighting corn pop, but you're in the White House now. You have to grow up, so to speak, politically. You have to meet the moment, and you're failing to do it.
And, then you have Vice President Harris, who gives her disastrous interview this week.
Oh, God.
Everybody's saying, why don't you do it? And she's like, do what now? Like what? I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Oh, I mean, my God, it's not surprising, at all that this administration has an approval rating that's hovering around 40%. I mean, it's actually even worse for Vice President Harris. And then we've got on this Republican side, all of these candidates coming up. Yeah, Trump's a little damaged. Republican voters still support him, though. You've got DeSantis surging, who is a far more dangerous version of Trump. You've got Ted Cruz still testing the waters. Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton, Chris Christie, Nikki Haley. They have people. We've got Biden and Harris and a party that is too terrified to primary Joe Biden. And that's what has to happen at this point. I mean, yes, Republicans did these bad things, but we have to have somebody that's going to fight against it. And we don't have that. We see it in Congress, as we had just talked about with the members of the squad here. But outside of that, we've got a couple of folks. Bernie, probably not going to happen again. And I do think, obviously, with age, I think that's something that voters like, well, we don't want to go back for another geriatric guy, even though Bernie, I mean, look, the guy hasn't lost a step in 40 years. But we've got nothing on the left. We have nothing. And that's what's terrifying to me, not just with these court decisions and with the immediate future of the party, but the longevity of it. There is nothing that I see on the horizon in terms of the number of people that they have on the right that they consider up and comers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is just clinging on to this geriatric old guard in the Democratic Party. I live in Illinois. I live in Chicago. Biden endorsed Congressman Davis for Illinois 7. This is an 88-year-old man clinging to life barely, like against a young progressive woman for that district who and it was a very close race. It was a very close race, much closer than last time. I think if she runs again, she'll definitely win. God, I would be astounded if Davis even makes it to the next election, let alone is able to run again. But I would put nothing past the Democratic Party. I mean, you got Feinstein for California. It's just an aging, even Nancy Pelosi. This is an aging party, and they are clinging to power and refusing to embrace the young, fresh faces of the party, as opposed to the Republicans who have done that. And, it's been generally pretty successful for them. And so when people ask me, right, like, Ray, who do you think could primary Biden? I don't have an answer, because they haven't made space for, a candidate who will, one, be old enough and, two, have, experience enough to run, right? The one person I always float around is Katie Porter, because I really like her. I think that she's fantastic. She appeals, to multiple parts of the Democratic Party. And she's, a mother, and people can really connect with that. I think that she would be a wonderful president, but I just don't think the party has given her the ability to introduce herself as a potential candidate. And they're going to continue to try to suppress anyone who wants to do that. So we're going to be left with, geriatric Biden and Kamala Harris, who is somehow even worse with the media than Joe Biden, despite him not even maybe being coherent most of the time. He still somehow does better with the media. It's astonishing. And with the economy where it is, with gas prices where they are, with the decisions coming out of the Supreme Court, like, for a lot of the voters, I mean, it doesn't matter if the Democrats don't have control over the Supreme Court, in the same way they do Congress. People know they're controlling Congress. So when they see these decisions coming out under Biden, they think, why haven't they done anything to stop this, right? The gas prices are high under Biden. The food prices are high under Biden, right? This is, I got checks under Trump. I've barely got any money from Biden. The child tax credit, which Kamala tried to hold up as an accomplishment, was ended under Biden. They didn't extend it. This is money that people saw they liked getting. It was extremely popular. It lifted so many kids out of poverty. And they refused to continue it. These are things that they can win on if they actually did anything. And instead, they're just blaming Republicans despite them being in power. It's a move that's not going to work right now.
It is. And a lot of it also has to do with the fact that we're still dealing, with the same kind of advisors that have been around in D.C. since the 90s. You know, the people that came to power with Bill Clinton, even after he left, they stayed. You know, they became seen as, you know, oh, these kingmakers, you know, all of these wonderful advisors, and they went on to have their great little careers with think tanks, and now they're back in there. And it's all the same people with the same way of thinking that got the Democrats in trouble in the 90s when we got that contract with America. And it's just continued to get worse since then. So you got to get rid of that, you know, geriatric congressional class, I guess you would call them. But you also got to get rid of the same old people, right? We need fresh blood at every level. And I don't see that happening. But so, okay, there's that problem with the Democrats. So let's get back to the Supreme Court for a minute, just because, my God, it's still getting worse by the day. You know, Thursday, we get this horrific decision where the Supreme Court says, hey, guess what, EPA? You don't get to regulate because we don't think it's, quote, plausible that Congress intended for this. You don't get to regulate carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants, which basically means we're going to continue our downward spiral with the you know, climate catastrophe that we're currently living through.
Yeah, this decision is ridiculous on so many fronts. First of all, you know, the lawsuit was brought by West Virginia and several power plants. They were suing for potential future legislation that hasn't even been floated by the EPA, which, so traditionally, you know, per the doctrine of standing, you have to, the law has either have to have caused you irreparable harm, or you have to prove that it will imminently cause you irreparable harm if it were to go into effect, right? There is no regulation in this case. They weren't suing for a regulation that was, you know, being promulgated currently, right? This is just the potential of it happening. And the Supreme Court didn't dismiss it, which essentially obliterates the doctrine of standing, you know, from a legal perspective. But I would expect nothing short of destroying the judicial system from the Supreme Court. So that was insane. But also the Supreme Court has held 2 times already, one time a unanimous decision, that the Clean Air Act does give the EPA the authority to regulate GHGs. So turning around now and saying it doesn't it's mind blowing. And essentially this is a threat to the entire administrative state because and it's encroaching on the Chevron doctrine. They never mentioned it by name in the decision. I think that's pretty intentional, but it's definitely a step forward to their active and very pernicious, you know, attempt to destroy the administrative state. But I mean, it's essentially saying that every piece of legislation has to be construed extremely narrowly by these administrative agencies. They can't, you know, essentially, if it's not written by word, by name in the legislation, they can't regulate it, which, I mean, the reason we don't interpret it like that is because Congress could never even conceive of every possible, they're not experts in this. That's why the agencies do this, because they are the experts. Congress is giving them broad authority, and then the experts at the agency are meant to, you know, make the rule, do the rulemaking and promulgate with their expertise that Congress doesn't have. So it's really, really constricting their ability, not just in this case, but just moving forward. It's really concerning.
Yeah, and you know, just to put that in layman's terms, basically what the court is saying here, for anybody who doesn't necessarily speak some legal language, it's like if your boss were to fire you because you had chicken nuggets for lunch, but they did not specifically have written in the company policy that you were allowed to have chicken nuggets for lunch. Yes, you're allowed to have lunch. I mean, you know, you got your lunch time, but we didn't say you could have chicken nuggets. So what the hell are you doing bringing this into our office? I mean, that is how ridiculous this ruling really is. And, you know, just to break it down into those very simple terms, that's what we're dealing with. And like you said, we had 2 previous cases where the court said absolutely, like, heck yeah, you can do this. This is you go about, you do your thing. So precedent doesn't matter. Standing doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We just have a lawless branch of government right now that is run by these theocratic extremists that are hell-bent on destroying everything. And basically what this EPA ruling also opens the door for is for other agencies to not be able to enforce their things. OSHA, the SEC, all of these other agencies, if it's not explicitly written that you're allowed to put regulations in place, then, no more hard hats for construction workers, no more protections if you get hurt on the job. I mean, the door is open, and they're going to take that opportunity, and I don't see, unless something happens, we're stuck with these idiots until they decide that they want to take a step away. And I don't see any of them doing that voluntarily. They're all going to pull a Scalia, basically.
I could see some of the older conservative justices, once there's a Republican president stepping away, and then that Republican president, the President Josh Hawley, that made me throw up a little bit in my mouth. But like, let's say there's President Josh Hawley is going to appoint some 25-year-old conservative Federalist guy straight out of law school to the bench who will live forever, and that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, that's like you said, it's either, court packing is an option, otherwise a massive natural disaster that only impacts the Supreme Court. Short of that, we are screwed for generations to come. You're having people who are, brought up by dark money to these positions that they hold, these 9 unelected wizards who get to decide everything about our lives, and the 6 of them that were brought up by the Federalist Society, which has, of course, a massive interest in oil and gas and not in protecting the environment and protecting the interests of the people, which is interesting because the Clean Air Act passed under Republicans. Almost all of our substantive environmental legislation was championed by Republicans at that time as part of the conservation movement, which was not inherently a conservative, or exclusively a conservative tenet of their ideology, but at that time was part of their platform, and it has just completely shifted. But I mean, it's concerning, right? Because I'm pretty young. I'm 25. I have to live with the ramifications of this if the Democrats don't step up and pass, an amendment saying that it explicitly allows them to regulate GHGs. The world is on fire, and this is the type of decisions that, these, again, 9 unelected wizards are making for us and for our future and for like the generations to come.
And, on top of that, too, we've got Miranda rights essentially being taken away. We have, you got prayer in schools. You've got public money that can now be used to fund religious schools. You've got, hey, states, you don't really get to determine how your gun laws work. I mean, and all of this, for the record, this is the last 7 to 14 days in America. We have seen every right, every protection that we have had get eroded, well, except the Second Amendment, obviously. Don't ever touch the Second Amendment. But that First Amendment, there's not much left. And even Clarence Thomas suggested that, hey, I kind of want to make it easier for people to sue media outlets in a case that was, not taken up by the court. So that would have been a little bit of a, more of an assault on the press here in the U.S. But my God, we're losing so much just constantly. Again, and this is just in 2 weeks, how much we have lost as a country. And they're only getting warmed up. I mean, by laying out, obviously, some of the cases they're taking up next time, we could lose more voting rights. We could lose, the ability to really even regulate how elections are handled. It's terrifying. And I hope people understand that, this isn't just, you need to be scared, but you need to be scared. I mean, you really kind of do, because we've got one party that wants to kill you and another party that says, man, I wish we could stop them from killing you, but hey, our hands are tied.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary, especially when it comes to Supreme Court, because we know that even when the Democrats are in power, it's very unlikely that because they could override Supreme Court decisions by passing legislation. That, the Equal Pay Act is a famous example of that. It's Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Act. It was to counteract the Ledbetter decision from the Supreme Court. They don't do that often. I really wish they would do that now, but I don't see it in the cards. But just one thing I want to touch on with that school prayer case, because a lot of people think that, even the conservative justices who I disagree with are deeply intelligent people. They are liars, and they are not. First of all, Alito writes worse than some of I was a TA this last year at my law school. worse than some of the students that I TA for. His writing is atrocious. It's garbage. Like, this is not like, he's not even a good writer. Kavanaugh, even worse. But, you know, he described the him and, or it's Clarence Thomas, I think, was the person who wrote that, or no, it was Alito. The school prayer case was talking about how is a private individual personal prayer. And in her dissent, the dissent puts a picture of it. The coach holding up football helmets surrounded by like 40 kids taking a knee. Like, the media is there. A state legislator is there. Like, what about that is private and personal? They are just lying to you. They're lying to the public, and they don't care. They know they're lying. They do not care. These are not, like, one good thing about this is that people are, I'm seeing the respect for the institution erode. It deserves no respect. This is an undemocratic institution that has such a stranglehold on our lives, on our country, and it's illegitimate. I mean, in my opinion, and the opinions of a lot of people, it's the wrong way to pursue justice.
Well, and you know, the Biden administration says they're totally against expanding the court because, you know, they don't want to erode the legitimacy of it, even though there is no longer any view of legitimacy of this court. My opinion on that is, I don't care if you put 100 seats on the court. You could put 200, 300, you know, make every single person in this country over the age of 18, you're now a Supreme Court justice. You all get it. And you're still not going to end up with a court that's a bigger joke than what we have right now. I mean, 300 million people could be Supreme Court justices because nothing matters anymore. This court is eroding everything. They're destroying precedent, which shouldn't even be. I mean, my God, how do people not understand that? Like, you can't do that. Settled law is settled law. But this court's a joke, so let's make it a joke. Let's put 500 frickin' people up there, you know, and then look at the picture that looks like a high school class photo at that point. but that, honestly, like, Biden is playing nice, and that's going to get people killed. That's the bottom line.
Yep. I mean, this is a court that's, I mean, overturning precedent is good if you're doing it to give people more rights. You know, overturning racist laws in this country, but this is not that. This is a moment where they're overturning precedent to take your rights away. And just the seriousness of this moment cannot be overstated. This this is going to kill people. People will die because of the Dobbs decision, right? People will die because the EPA can't regulate greenhouse gases. And funny enough, with that case, a lot of power plants wrote in support of the EPA because of the individual litigation that they would be bogged down with without those regulations in place, which would, to some effect, shield them from people suing them. So, I mean, it's just, it's so silly. Everything about the Supreme Court is silly. And I can't emphasize enough how unserious it is. I mean, it's serious as you know, the ramifications of it, but they are not serious people. And there's just there's no basis of law for which these are all ideological decisions that they're churning out. They can find any sort of justification. They can pick up any law book and find a way to justify what they're doing. But I mean, it's silly. It's just so silly.
It is. All right. Listen, Rayyvana, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at RayyvanaTTV because at Rayyvana is being held hostage by a woman who hasn't tweeted since 2010. You can follow me on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Rayyvana. And you can see my daily videos on Rebel HQ on YouTube and Facebook. You can also see my show Reactions on TYT's Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TYT every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Wonderful. Rayyvana, thank you so much for this conversation today. It was wonderful. Look forward to having you back on in the future. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.